Arcade Magazine, for those of you that are familiar with that, it's every year they have a new designer that's tasked with doing 4 issues or 1 volume. So I got to do volume 23. So the challenge with Arcade is it's all volunteer-based. So you've got articles coming in from everywhere, varying lengths, varying types of imagery. So how do you create a structure that can hold enormous amounts of content, because there's a lot of text within here. And then you've got these recurring sections, new work, ID, exhibition, and then you've got guest editorial for each particular volume or each particular issue. So this was the first one. It's 2-color. You've probably seen it around. It's printed pretty low quality newsprint. This was 23.2. So again, I think of a book as a system. So it's pretty easy, and I think those of you who've had any publication design or have done a book, it's pretty easy to make one spread look great. How do you then tie that in over several spreads? And then how do you make that function over several issues? So this is all from issue 23.2. This is the guest editorial from 23.3. Again, what I would do with the guest editorial is there's a different person each time. Was that I treated that with a different grid and a different typeface. So this was all guest editorial for the 3rd one. And then the 4th one, and I think Karen's designed Arcade, some other people have too. You sort of feel like by the 4th one you're starting to get a sense of what the system is and what you can do with it. So in this particular one I was experimenting with 1 essay but 2 different column widths, so that is 1 article that I was exploring like wider to skinnier for each of those essays. And then just a sense of, like I said, I think of a book as a system, so it's got to work, it's got to be paced through the whole thing, but then how do you make the entire series work? Not that people would have it laid out this way, but that you've developed a grid and a system that can house all that content, but still look fresh. Digital Kitchen is a motion design studio here in Seattle. They have offices in LA, Chicago, New York, and Seattle. And they, are primarily known, or they were at one point, for just their titles. And so they every year put out a promotional piece, or they used to. Now it's mostly online, but they would put out a reel that showed their capabilities. And what they were having trouble with is that most people just assume they did titles. So they're best known for 6 Feet Under, Dexter, True Blood, House, Ghost Whisperers, Upper Right. And so they wanted to have a piece that would showcase not just their capabilities, but the people behind the work, because you see this finished, polished work, but you didn't really have a sense of who they were, and also their process. So here's the package that I created for them. So you've got this disc that's inserted in there, and then you've got this 20-page reel packaging. This reel insert is what we called it, and then that's the exterior packaging. So what you've got to work with this is, I think they gave me a library of something like 14,000 images to sort through. So then you've got to come up with how do you create interesting crops in and amongst themselves. So each image should be a beautiful composition, but then how do you pace it so that you've got great compositions for a whole bunch of different images. So they had spreads for graphics. This was another of the interior spreads. This was 20-something pages, and if you have 20 pages just crammed full of images, it can get exhausting. So how do you deal again with pacing, finding the right combination? So they had spreads for graphics, live action, and product, which particular sections, and the words live action and graphics and product were varnished onto the type. And I was looking at this the other day, and this is apparently the $20,000 chocolate chip cookie. It's something like 3 or 4 feet wide. It was a large model that they made. It was they had huge Hershey Kisses too. But they wanted to be able to showcase all the capabilities that they have. And so, finding the right combinations of images per spread. We had a process spread in there because this is where they can show that, yes, indeed, we have shot live action with a tiger, and we can shoot cars, and we can play with fire, and what future employee doesn't want to play with fire? So having images like that to be able to show just the depth and breadth of the company itself. And then one of the spreads that was in there was just the people, and this is all the people that work for DK, and in the different offices. And I think that this really helps. You could have everyone kind of pose in the same way, but this really gets across some of the personality of the company. So this was mailed out with the real insert itself, and then they had this run list, which is basically a list of the projects. And again, that disc had a general and a genre And so this was just a single insert. It's up in the gallery if you want to see it. But this challenge became like one side, the genre reel had a lot of pieces to play, and then the general was short. So how do you create an interesting setup for those? And again, the general and genre varnished onto the paper. So that was a fun project. And it's challenging to kind of sift through again the 14,000 something images to find the right ones. That's the cover, which was foil stamped, and then this was just packaged and mailed out. A little while after that, I worked on their website. This was live from 2007 to 2009. And again, this is where the work is really rich, so there isn't really a need to put some sort of overly styled design on top of the website itself. That's not to say that design isn't important here, it's just that we want the work to show itself. It's sort of like when we tell the students, don't create some really fancy portfolio, like let the work inside the portfolio come out. So they organized the work here through experience, entertainment, and advertising. They were going after specific industries. So this is the home page, and you have one featured project on there. Feel free to come in. I feel bad for those of you hanging. One featured project there on the left, and that would be 4 stills, and they could rotate that out as needed. And then on the right, there would be 5 projects that they could rotate out, and you'd roll over them and get a little information. You could click to play it. You could also choose to go into one of the specific industries, and then you'd be into a page with thumbnails of all the work. You could, this work was sorted alphabetically or by date. You could roll over the name of the project on the right, and it would highlight the work itself, or you could roll over the thumbnail, and it would tell you what that particular project was. Then you could click to play it. And each project had its own little pop-up window. And if there were multiple spots, which they often did multiple spots for one client, they'd have them listed here along with credits. And then, at DK, certainly at the time, they all are on iChat. They're furiously iChatting, even if they're one office away from each other. And they wanted the ability to be able to copy a URL for a project and send it to someone else, whether it's in DK or somewhere else. So they had this URL that was available. I think people call this in development terms the Easter egg. This is my kid put in here. But VECU, I don't know if you've seen those commercials around for the venue, but they actually use real people. And so I think last year, 3 of the VCD grads, Ronald, Tanya, and Josh are in one of the spots too. So anyway, that's my kid. So Red Square, this is the last project I was going to show you.